Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I bring you another episode in the turbulent journey of Hoai and Hung. That morning, a strange man appeared in front of Hoai's house. He stood there in silence for a long time, as if gathering enough courage to knock on the door. When Hoai stepped outside, the man could only choke out, "Ca, you are the child who went missing 20 years ago." In his hands were a bundle of old, faded photographs, a worn silver bracelet, and eyes filled with longing and hope. But Hoai could only stand frozen. She could not believe it. She could not open her heart. She could not face a truth that might change her entire life. Hung stepped out, gently holding her hand to calm her. No one said much. Only the wind and a heavy silence lingered between the three of them. In the end, all three went to the hospital for a DNA test. When the sample was submitted, Hoai's hands trembled slightly, because she knew that result would determine both her past and her future. So what will the result be? Is the truth really what that man claims? Stay tuned for today's episode to see what awaits Hoai. Tuesday afternoon, the sky looked as if it was covered by a thick, heavy gray blanket. Dark clouds drifted slowly above the hill in front of Hoai's house. There was not a single ray of sunlight. Only a quiet chill creeping through the cracks of the doors, sliding across the cold floor tiles, wrapping around her ankles and making anyone shiver. In the small kitchen, Hoai stood silently over a pot of porridge bubbling on the stove. She stirred it, but her mind was wandering somewhere far away. The steam rose, blurring her vision and stinging her eyes, yet her hands remained ice cold. A kind of cold that did not come from the weather, but from the nameless anxiety clinging to her since morning. She felt something was coming. Something she would not be able to avoid. Right then, the phone rang. The sharp sound cut through the quiet kitchen, loud enough to make her flinch. Just a few seconds of ringing, but it felt like a blade slicing through the fragile calm she had been trying to hold on to all day. Hoai set down the spoon, wiped her hands on her apron, and stepped toward the table. The screen lit up. Only 3 words appeared. The hospital called. Her heart tightened instantly, so sharply she had to take a small breath to keep her balance. Hung rushed in from the other room. One glance at her face was enough for him to understand something was wrong. His expression stiffened, but his voice softened as much as he could manage. "Let me listen with you." Hoai did not speak. She only nodded. She pressed the speaker button. On the other end, a nurse's calm, measured voice filled the room, as if she was trying to soothe the listeners with every word. "The DNA results are ready. You can come to receive them in person." The call ended, and the entire house fell into an eerie silence. No more bubbling porridge. No more wind outside. No more chickens clucking from the yard. It was as if time had paused for a moment. Tony sat on his little wooden chair, hugging his worn-out stuffed animal. He looked up at his mother with wide, innocent eyes, not understanding, but sensing the tension filling the room. He squeezed his toy tighter, as if his instincts were telling him that something very big was frightening his mother. Hoai swallowed hard. She tried to turn off the phone, but her fingers trembled so much she kept missing the screen. She had to place her hand on the counter to steady herself and quiet the storm in her chest. Hung stepped forward, gentle but firm. He took her hand, small, cold, almost devoid of strength. His hand was warm, large, steady, pulling her out of her spiraling thoughts. "Let's go," he said, his voice low but unwavering. "I'm going with you. I won't let you face this alone." Hoai looked up at him. Her eyes were like a lake disturbed by a sudden gust of wind. But after a few seconds, she drew in a deep breath, and nodded. Whatever lay ahead, a sweet truth or a devastating blow, Hung was here. Right beside her. And that was enough for her to take the next step. No one knew how long the man had been waiting. The hospital hallway was long and empty, yet he still sat there, his back slightly hunched, his hands clasped tightly together as if he were praying for something. Every time footsteps echoed in the corridor, he would lift his head quickly, only to fall into disappointment when it was not Hoai. Until she finally arrived. The moment he saw Hoai walking toward him with Hung and Tony, he shot to his feet. The chair behind him wobbled, nearly falling over. His eyes were red, not just from waiting, but from 20 years of longing gathering into this single moment. His hands trembled non-stop. Trembled so much that even when he tried to squeeze them together, he could not stop the shaking. As if the paper he was about to receive could either shatter his world or prove that his entire life's belief had been right. The examination room door opened. A nurse stepped out, holding a white envelope. Her professional, gentle voice landed straight into their hearts. These are the results. The man stared at the envelope as if staring at his fate. But it was Hung who stepped forward to receive it first, knowing that Hoai's hands were too cold and too weak to hold it. He turned back and handed the envelope to her with calm strength and tenderness. Open it. Hoai took a long breath. Only now did she realize how hard her heart was pounding, almost painfully. Her thumbs trembled slightly as she opened the envelope. A folded sheet of paper, stiff, cold, slid out. She looked at the first line. And her heart clenched. The results confirm a biological father-child match. Hoai froze, her feet rooted to the tiled floor. The world around her blurred, leaving only the paper and that one sentence echoing again and again in her mind. Her eyes burned instantly. She raised a hand to her mouth, trying to hold back the sob building in her throat, but she could not form a single word. Right then, the man collapsed to one knee. His entire body seemed to release decades of pain and waiting. His voice broke into shards. "Ca, you really are my daughter, my girl." He covered his face as tears fell onto the cold floor. The sound of his choked sobs was like that of someone who had spent a lifetime searching and had finally touched what mattered most. Hoai no longer hesitated. She rushed forward and wrapped her arms around him. A trembling, warm, aching embrace, the embrace of two lives reunited after 20 years apart. The man held her tightly, as if afraid that if he loosened his grip, she would disappear again just like before. Tony stood nearby, hugging his stuffed animal, watching with curious, gentle eyes. The little boy toddled closer, clutching Hung's leg, mumbling softly, as if some instinct whispered that the crying man was no longer a stranger. Hung leaned down, placing a steady hand on Hoai's back as she trembled in her father's arms. His voice was low, warm, and slow. "You have a real family now." Hoai closed her eyes, letting the tears fall. Not out of fear, but because, for the first time in her life, she finally understood what it meant to belong. On the way home, the car crawled quietly up the familiar winding hills. The evening fell slowly, but heavily, as if pressing down on the entire sky. A thin layer of mist clung to the windshield, blurred further each time the cold wind hit it. The scattered streetlights cast pale yellow streaks through the windows, sliding across the faces of three people, each with their own sorrow, all sharing the same unspoken ache. No one turned on the radio. No one tried to make small talk. There was only the steady hum of the engine, and the fragile breathing of a pain that had lasted 2 decades. Hoai's father sat in the back seat, his posture slightly hunched as if afraid of taking up space. His hands were clasped together, thin fingers trembling, not from the cold, but from a heart aching with every beat. He finally spoke, his voice old and torn. "That day, your mother took you to the market. She turned away for just a moment, and you were gone." Hoai turned halfway in her seat. She had never seen a man tremble like that when speaking of the past. His shoulders shook lightly, like he could not withstand even a small gust of wind. He continued, voice cracking. "After that, your mother lived in guilt, blaming herself every day. She got sick, and passed away early." The final words almost dissolved into the air. He lowered his head, eyes red but unable to look at her, afraid of hurting her more, afraid of seeing in her face the shadow of the woman he had loved all his life. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his voice. "I am sorry. I searched for you for decades, traveling from one province to another. Anywhere I heard there might be news, I went." He let out a small laugh, but it was a laugh more painful than tears. "Everything I earned. I spent it all looking for you. I was tricked many times, but..." His voice finally broke. "I never gave up. Not a single day did I forget you, not one day." The words ripped through the silence inside the car. Hoai reached out and took his hand, a hand that had worked its whole life, rough and calloused, yet carrying a love she had never once received. Her tears fell onto the back of his hand. Her breath trembled, touching the softest part of her heart. "Dad. I used to wish that one day, someone would call me their child." Her voice was small, but it cut deep. The man trembled, lifting his other hand to gently caress her head, a soft touch, as if trying to make up for 20 years of being apart. Hoai sobbed. He cried with her. Father and daughter held onto each other across the empty space of 20 years, a gap that, starting today, was finally being filled. In Hung's arms, Tony sat quietly, clutching his stuffed toy, his big round eyes watching everything. He did not understand, but he stayed unusually silent, sensing something sacred happening. In the front seat, Hung continued driving, his eyes reddened. He kept his gaze on the road, his hands steady on the wheel, but his throat tight with emotion. He did not interrupt or turn around, because he knew this moment belonged to them. But the way he slowed the car each time Hoai's father faltered. The way he inhaled deeply when Hoai cried. The way he gripped the steering wheel just to keep himself from crying too. Said everything. He hurt with them. He rejoiced with them. And he was trying to be the anchor for Hoai while her whole world shifted around her. Inside that small, cold car on a gray evening, 3 people, separated for 20 years, were slowly rediscovering the warmth of the word family. By the time they returned home, dusk had already settled. The small yard in front of Hoai's house glowed under the warm yellow light of the hanging bulbs, shining down on the wooden tables and chairs set up in a hurry. She and Hung rushed to prepare a few simple dishes. Nothing fancy, just braised fish, boiled vegetables, a pot of hot soup, and some caramelized pork, but filled with meaning and love. News of Hoai finding her biological father spread quickly across the mountain village. Relatives and close neighbors came by as soon as they heard. Each person brought something, a bag of sticky rice, a bunch of vegetables, a freshly cleaned chicken. The joy in the air was enough to sweep away the gloom of the entire afternoon. The adults gathered, raised their cups, and toasted. Many of them grew emotional watching Hoai, the girl who had once been orphaned, who had endured so much hardship, now reunited with her own family. Several older women sighed softly. She suffered enough. Today heaven finally shows her mercy. Hoai bowed and thanked everyone one by one. Her heart felt lighter, warmer than it had in years. Tony sat in the arms of Hoai's father. The little boy still did not know how to speak, but he clapped his hands, babbled happily, and laughed with bright eyes. He leaned his soft head against the chest of the grandfather who had just entered his life. Her father gently stroked the child's hair. "I will love this boy, as much as I love you." His voice was quiet but so full of emotion that some people turned away so they would not cry. Dinner unfolded with lively conversation. No one wanted to leave because the warmth of that gathering was rare, the kind of warmth you wish you could keep forever and tuck deep into your heart. When everyone finally left, the yard fell silent again. A soft breeze moved through the flower pots by the porch, sounding like a peaceful sigh of the quiet night. Hoai pulled a chair closer to her father, speaking softly but sincerely. "Dad, please come live with me and Hung. Let us take care of you when you get older." He looked at his daughter for a long moment. His eyes were gentle, like the yellow light on the porch, warm, soft, but filled with memories of the wife he had lost. He placed a hand on her hair, the tender motion of a father comforting a child. "You love me, that already makes me happy. But I am used to my old home, used to your mother's altar. Only there do I feel like she is still with me." Hoai lowered her head, pressing her lips together. She understood. And the more she understood, the more it hurt, yet the more she loved him. "I understand." Hung stood beside her and placed a hand on her back. A light touch, but enough for her to lean on. "We will visit him often," he said, his voice steady like a promise carved in stone. Hoai's father looked at them, the daughter he had just found, and the son-in-law who loved her like his own blood, and his eyes shone with a deep, indescribable contentment. He smiled gently. "Today is the happiest day of my life." He exhaled softly, as if releasing the burden of 20 years. In that moment, the small home felt warmer than ever, warmed by family, by tears of joy that come only once in a lifetime. Night fell quickly. The entire hillside sank into a deep blue shade as darkness settled. The wind brushed against the metal roof, creating soft, crackling sounds like the whispers of the mountains. The yellow porch light cast a faint glow across the tiled ground, just enough to illuminate the narrow path leading to the gate. Hoai's father stood there for a moment before leaving. He looked back at the house, at his daughter, at Tony, as if trying to memorize every second. Then he smiled gently, waved, and walked down the dark path with slow, careful steps. Hoai stood in the doorway, watching his thin figure fade completely into the night. The cold wind swept past her, but her heart felt warm, full, glowing, and unfamiliar after so many years without a family's love. Yet, for some reason, beneath that warmth, a faint uneasiness crept in. Something vague, like the instinct of someone who has endured too much loss. She lifted Tony into her arms. The little boy nuzzled into her chest, his tiny hand tapping lightly on her shirt as if comforting her. Hoai stared into the distance, her voice soft as the wind. "I wonder if this happiness will last." Old memories of being orphaned, abandoned, surviving the world alone, made it hard for her to believe that things could truly stay good. Hung stepped closer without rushing. He quietly wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her gently against his chest. "Whatever comes, we will face it together," he said slowly, firmly. "You are not alone anymore." His voice was warm, like a small flame in the cold night. Those words loosened her shoulders, as if lifting a weight she had carried for far too long. Tony rested between them, babbling innocently, unintentionally making the moment feel even more complete. Under the soft glow of the porch light, the three of them held on to one another. The newly found family bond, the steady love, and the child's innocent presence blended into a rare moment of peace. But ahead, there were still so many unanswered questions. Summary of today's climax. DNA confirms a match. Hoai reunites with her father after 20 years. Her father breaks down in tears, and she embraces him after a lifetime of being alone. Hung feels true happiness seeing his wife reunited with her own blood. A warm, heartfelt dinner brings joy to the entire village. But will this happiness last? Stay tuned for the next episode tomorrow. What secrets from the past are still hidden? And who will be the next person to step into Hoai's life?
Quay trở lại với kênh của mình, nay thì mình tiếp tục mang đến video về câu chuyện tình yêu của Lythieuca nha mọi người. Giờ thì mình đang đặt tên video.